For all your real estate, financing, and investing questions, call the show's off-air number and speak with Mike Gray directly. 530-431-8586. That's 530-431-8586. Now, the Golden State Report with Mike, Amy, and Dave.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Golden State Report, heard every weekend on AM 1380. I'm Mike Gray with Morris Williams Realty, along with David Stone from the Sierra Consulting Group.
Great to be here, Mike.
And Amy DeBus from American Pacific Mortgage.
It is also great to be here.
Well, I wanted to spend some time again talking about how real estate is changing just a bit because of some litigation that came down earlier this year in 2024 on commissions.
Yeah.
And I've shared a bit about this earlier and how, in my opinion, it's not going to change a lot, but there are going to be new forms. Good realtors out there have always shared with sellers that commissions were negotiable. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now we're going to there'll be some more forms. And now there's a trend you may not see where sellers are not going to offer the buyer's brokerage a commission. And it's up to the buyer and the buyer's agent to negotiate amongst themselves a commission to be paid to help them buy a house. I don't think that's the way you're going to see most houses sell down the road. I think you're going to see sellers continue to offer commissions because that's the best way to draw the highest number of buyers and to sell your house as quickly as we can for the highest price.
Right.
And there are ways we can help. If the seller refuses to pay it and the buyer has to do it, the buyer can either pay it. We can negotiate it as part of the purchase agreement. I mean, it's just going to change the rules just a bit.
Right. So have you had any experience with dealing with clients or prospective clients as you have kind of navigated this? This has been going on for a couple months, right?
Right. And it really will take effect in late August, early September.
Okay.
And the biggest change is that we can no longer, to the MLS, offer state in the MLS in the listing what we're offering to pay.
But there's nothing that prevents you from calling the other listing agent.
I just got to call the listing agent saying, is the seller paying a buyer's broker's commission?
So that hasn't changed yet, though, correct?
No, those changes are going to come in. They gave us a certain amount of time to change the forms, change the rules, and the rules. And also the other thing is that whenever I show a buyer a house, I have to have a form that they sign saying, you understand this is how I get paid if I show you this house and you want to make an offer.
Right. So you've already been telling people this, but I know the news has been talking about this, right? We've been talking about it on the show for a number of months.
I don't think it's going to change a lot in a neutral market where there are just as many buyers or sellers. Or in a buyer's market, the sellers are going to realize, hey, in order for me to sell their home, I'm going to offer a commission to the buyer's brokerage, just like it always has been done for the last number of years. It's always negotiable.
Right.
But there are going to be some sellers who are going to insist that saying, you know what, I don't have to pay the buyer's brokerage. And so you asked for an example. I had an example late last week. I had a referral from somebody who wanted to sell their house, and they were going to downsize.
Okay.
We talked about the issues why people sell, and they were going to buy a house. And so he said, they referred me, and so I had never met these people before, and I called them and set up an appointment, did my pre-listing homework. They had a nice house, nice location. I knew what the house was going to be worth, and sat down with them, and we got along very, very well. Mm-hmm. And so I said, let's talk about selling your house, and let's talk about commissions. I kind of shared this whole story about how I always share that commissions are negotiable. Mm-hmm. And I said, my recommendation is, this is what my company charges, which was 2.5%. And he was fine with that.
Okay.
And so I said, this is why I charge 2.5%. He said, no. He said, you come highly recommended. I think I just by what we've talked about so far, you're worth what the 2.5%.
Okay.
And I said,
good.
well, when we sell, I said, no, we have an option of offering the buyer's brokerage. My recommendation is that we offer them 2.5%. I think that's the best way to sell your house. I think we'll get the highest dollar and we'll sell as quick as we can.
Maybe get more agents bringing people to see the house.
And I shared the pros and cons of why I thought it was a good idea. And he looked at me and he said, well, as I understand it now, you said those were negotiable and I don't have to pay the buyer's brokers anything. And I said, that's correct. I said, so that's why we're having the discussion right now. He goes, well, I choose not to pay the buyer's broker. I will pay you.
It's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
It's what everybody feared,
And I said, what, you have that right, but let's talk about that because I think it will limit. He said, well, aren't agents supposed to show houses regardless of how they're getting paid? That is true. A good agent has a fiduciary responsibility to show their buyers any home that's on the market.
Does the agent really have a fiduciary responsibility by law, or is that just by
Well,
the guys and gals that have great big hearts that want to do the right
I think
thing.
it's an ethical responsibility. If you
Okay.
have a buyer and they're looking for a home,
So it's an ethical-
but they may not be able to buy that house because I charge 2.5%.
Right.
And if the seller's not going to pay it and the buyer can't pay it, we can't show that house.
Right.
Or if I can't negotiate it as part of the purchase agreement, which I still think is a remedy, by the way.
Of course, we have a remedy for
Yeah,
this,
right.
but
Right.
it just this scenario makes it more complicated.
And so the seller had that right. And so I said, I understand, but it's going to limit the number of your buyer pool. And he said, well, it's the seller's market, and I'm not really worried about that. And that was a true statement.
Yeah.
It's the seller's
So
market.
so he said, look, I'm going to stick with
Right.
that. I'm not going to do that for
Right. And so we were talking.
the
So then I just flipped it around. I said, okay, so now we're selling your house and we're going to buy a house. He said, I want you to only show me houses where the seller's paying the commission.
Oh, seriously?
Yes. So he wanted to have it this way. Now he has that right to ask that. And I said, explain that to me. And he said, well, no, I don't. I just want to look at houses where the seller's going to pay it. I said, but you won't pay it on this end. No, because I don't have to. And we kind of navigated through this discussion.
Boy.
And I realized that,
Interesting.
you know what, I've walked this road in my past with people who really, really are, I don't want to say, are kind of penny pinchers. I just got to be honest, are very frugal to the point where everything is negotiated, and I finally decided, you know what, I don't think I'm the right realtor for you. And I
Yeah.
said that to him. I said,
Yeah.
there are a lot of other realtors out there, and you have the right to choose anybody you have, but I also have the right to choose who I choose to work with.
Right.
And I choose not to work with you, and it really upset him. I got
I
to be
bet.
honest. It really upset
Well, I
him.
wish I could have been a little mouse in the corner.
And his wife was there. She was
Yes.
she was getting more uncomfortable. And I said, I'm not trying to make it a big issue here. It's just that we are not a good match for what my life values are and
Right.
how I want to treat other people and how you and how I see how you're going to be treating other people. And he took quite a offense by this, to be honest. But we ended the conversation, and he'll find another realtor.
Well, and you know what? One of my favorite sayings in my business that I've said for a very long time is one of the best sales that you've ever made is the one you didn't. But as you said, I hope there is a realtor out there that can help him and has more time to deal with, him not being happy throughout the entire transaction and complaining and, fighting against everything
Well,
that
I mean,
happens.
I was sharing somebody else's story. They said, "Why don't you just sell the house and then not help them buy?" I said, "Because the problem still would have existed.
Yeah.
Right.
Every
Absolutely.
Every item would have been negotiated. Everything would have been difficult. Everything would have been. And that seller has that right to live his life that way.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I also have the right to say, you know what? I choose not to work with people like that.
Yep.
And it's like when I was being interviewed by somebody who said, I want to buy a lot of houses and I want to make sure I get the best deal on the block. I always want to make sure that I can tell I got the lowest price and the best deal on the block. And I chose not to work with that person.
Yeah, you want to
So-
give a fair price for a fair product. That's been the mantra that I've known you for almost 10 years. That's the common thing that I've seen in you, Mike. That's been you're a fair person to work with, and you're honest, and that goes a long way.
I just want to treat people right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just sensed that this was going to put me in a situation where I'd have to make some tough calls.
And some other
I mean,
agents as well. You want to
Right.
be respectful of the other agents too.
Well, if you have any questions about how this is going to change our industry, I'd be more than willing to talk with you about it. The phone number is 530-431-8586. Again, 530-431-8586. It's been a pleasure to be part of your weekend listening. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week and would choose to listen again next week. Thank you, everyone.
Me and you